Mike.
Hey, Scott.
Well, I'm Scott Anderson. I work with the Jazz Festival this year, Chicago Jazz Festival, and I also work with the Jazz Institute of Chicago. A little got some merchandise here,
Yep.
and we are thrilled that you're going to be performing this Friday at 6:30 on the Jay Pritzker Pavilion stage.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, when's so you've played the festival before?
Yeah. Yeah. I've played main stage, side stage, before. Yeah.
Okay. Um, so I guess first of all, like, uh, what's the past? This is the first year that the festival's back all 4 days, just like it was in 2019.
Yeah.
What were you doing during these past few years? To keep busy
Well,
and
um, you know, practicing, but also I finished a PhD in 2020 at University of Chicago in ethnomusicology, studying some history of the South Side music scene that has been documented. Also doing ethnographic work with musicians like George Freeman, Teddy Thomas, on their memory of past clubs, places where they used to play, telling stories, making interesting historical connections, and then interviewing people who had gone to the apartment lounge and working towards what I hope will eventually be a book about Von Freeman and his family's contributions to music and culture in Chicago and in African American culture more broadly. And then I did that and raised my daughter, who's now at Oberlin, and that kept me really busy because, as you know, you have two, so it's like having one daughter at home taking class while I'm teaching class at University of Chicago
yeah.
was fun. And then I also finished up my album Vonology, which came out earlier this year. That I would do in the studio during the pandemic. A lot of editing in February of 2021. John Abbey, the engineer, and I spent an entire week, 20 some hours, getting it done,
Wow.
and bringing in my daughter actually to sing a little bit, and also doing the editing. So, I mean, and I was teaching at the university. I was on a fellowship, what they call the Humanities Teaching Fellowship. That's over, and I'm actually excited to say that I have been appointed their new director of jazz ensembles. Um,
Congratulations.
Thank you. Moata Bowden retired, and they appointed me to the position that he held. So, got big shoes to follow, but I'm really looking forward to teaching the ensembles and teaching the students about improvisation and jazz, and bringing in a lot of Chicagoans to be part of that process.
I saw Gabby some of the clips on where she was playing at Fulton with you guys. Is
Uh-huh.
that right?
Yeah, we played Fulton 2 weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah, she was great, man. That was were you? I guess I would assume you were instrumental in her trajectory towards singing. And
It's funny. It really, and as a dad, it's like your kids grab onto things and you don't know why. And Gabby was singing when she was one. I mean, I have recordings of her when she was 18 months old singing the ABCs like perfect. I've got recordings of her at 2.5, 3, singing the entire "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" song, and doing variations that fit. And Vaughn used to call Gabriella Little Outski because I had a recording of her scatting on a blues when she was 4, and she's making the changes. And I have no idea how she's hearing this. So singing was always there for her. Now, of course, when she was taking piano lessons and she'd make a mistake, I'd be in the kitchen cooking. I'm like, hey, that's a C sharp, not a C. And he's like, oh, okay, because I can hear. And so, but I tell you, I mean, we certainly worked on theory and music here, just mostly playing together. But she learned a lot from the Chicago Children's Choir, a lot of her theory, and man, her piano lessons and her reading. Her piano lessons and what she had to do in the choir made her. She's a perfect sight reader, like better than I ever was.
really,
And so she now is at Oberlin studying jazz voice, and she was really instrumental in picking. She picked all the songs at our last gig. We kind of collaborated on the arrangements. They were mostly her ideas. She's very, very focused and knows what she wants to do with music. So
well, it's like it's testimony to you and Maria that she's is not rebelling and wants to go in that.
Yeah, well, it's different though. She's not a jazz. She's studying jazz and she loves jazz, but I don't think she considers herself a jazz singer. She loved the choir and doing all these like gigs, like singing background on stuff. She sang on a song that Peter Cottontail released in 2020 called "Together," with a couple of her colleagues, and just being in the studio and like singing your part and with all of the love, that's her. She loves that, but she also sings ballads like crazy. Like she'll make you cry every time. So, it's really interesting. She has her own direction,
Would
definitely.
be in town for Friday to see you on stage?
No, unfortunately not. The Oberlin starts classes on Thursday, and she is involved in a lot of she and one of her colleagues founded an organization called the Oberlin Crimson Collective, which does workshops and addresses gender discrimination in the jazz program there. And they've become very big, like nationally big. Like they're now making all these connections. So now the college is having them do a lot of stuff with their students.
Or
And
kind of policy towards
yeah,
mostly?
she's like activist stuff, and she also has going to have homework. And getting her out here just was not going to in the cards. So
Well, cool.
this
Let's talk a little
weekend.
bit about Friday.
Okay,
All right.
it's
So
Thursday.
Friday. What's that?
Thursday is my show.
I'm Thursday. Sorry, Thursday.
Yeah,
Sorry, Thursday. Yep. I keep thinking that the festival starts on
yeah,
like.
I know. Yeah, but it starts Thursday. Yeah.
Um, all right. Well, so you're doing Vonology.
Uh huh.
Can you tell me a little bit about like when did Von Freeman first register with you?
Oh, geez. That would have been in the spring of 1990. And Freed Hawk had just gotten the NIU gig, and he says, "You need to go hear Von Freeman." And Freed took myself, Tom Vaitsis, the pianist, and several other students to the apartment lounge.
Mhm.
And I heard Von, and I said, "What is this?" I couldn't believe it. And we actually sat in, and his pianist, John Logan, at the time, really liked Tom and I. He really liked our playing. So he says, "Hey, I got another gig with Vaughn on Thursdays. Why don't you come down?" And then Tom and I were so excited, and then we started driving out from DeKalb and seeing Vaughn play, and over years we became, got to know each other, and then he started hiring me, and then I got his gig in '97 at the apartment lounge.
So could you describe a little bit of like, I guess, how what role did he play in your life from that time when you first started to his resonance was hitting you? Like how
Well,
it how did
Vaughn
it?
was classic, classic mentor apprentice relationship. When I study like the Guru Shisha relationship of the like tabla in India, is a very similar relationship, except you're not with your mentor all the time, every single day. Vaughn was immediately anyone that started to come regularly and was improving, he would attach to. He would notice you. He would say things to you that encouraged you. And he really helped me believe in myself. Not only is that I could do this music, but I could do it in my own way, because that was what was important. I remember saying things to him like, "Oh, I heard this young guitarist who was big at that moment. I don't remember who it was. Just somebody who was big and on the radio." And he's like, "Yeah, we didn't have what you got. I wouldn't even worry about what that guy's doing. You should worry about what you're doing, because what you're doing is great." And so he would really made me help me believe in myself. And then being around him, being at the apartment lounge, I met so many musicians. So it was like a catalyst for networking. I just met these other enthusiasts, and you meet fans. And back in that day, you had many more fans who knew people. So there was like musicians. Like there was this one drug dealer. His name was Cookie, and Cookie knew Bird, and he would tell me stories about hanging out with Bird, and then he'd go sell something. I don't know what he was selling. It was weed or something more much heavier. But you hear stories that, "Oh, I saw Miles Davis," or I met Teddy Thomas, and oh yeah, Andrew Hill and I were best friends growing up. And you're like, "What is this? This is incredible."
And
And
you feel like you're part of this all of a sudden this
part of this thing, and it was very much opposite of what jazz education was at that time, which was very white and it was very none of your professors were performers. They had to have a piece of paper before the university would hire them. So you didn't have Freed was the first like real player NIU had hired at that point. I
Oh,
mean, I guess Steve Duke was there, so he counts as a great player, but Steve was an anomaly. That was pretty rare. Maybe me. I don't know. Maybe a new school. I know William Patterson definitely had. They're bigger. But I'm talking about your average jazz program. You didn't have players. Now you do, but
yeah.
but back then you didn't. So it was like you're being taught these rules and all this stuff, and it's so disembodied from its context. And so going to where the music is alive and living and meaningful, not only for the musicians but for the people who are there, that just opened up a whole other world for me. So I was addicted. I would go every Tuesday. I even lived in Cincinnati for a couple of years, and I would go every 2 weeks to see him. I'd drive up, stay with my folks, and then go see Vaughn and go back the next day because I said I can't miss out on Vaughn.
All right.
You know?
Cool. So you during the pandemic, you went back to school to get
No,
your
no,
doctorate.
I was in school from 2013 until 2020.
Oh, but you were working in your not okay. So you were working on your doctorate then at that point.
Yes, I was doing my dissertation during the
Okay.
pandemic. I was
And,
on a go ahead.
and so how what was the decision to do this phonology this that you were working on?
Well, Vonology came out of I'd already done a bunch of research and I was starting to put it together to make chapters for my dissertation. I hadn't received the uh, dissertation fellowship yet, but I was finishing up my work, and Lauren Deutsch approached me and asked me to when she was still executive director of the JIC, asked me to help her program a year of concerts in dedication to Vaughn. Miguel de la Sinner was there, and John Foster Brooks was there as well. And
Yeah.
we conversed, and
Is that 2017?
it was the summer of 2017 that we met, and it was 2018 was the year of the concerts.
Okay.
So she wanted to do a bunch of stuff and finish the year with me. Now, what had happened is in 2011, she asked me to perform at the festival she was helping program in Poznan, Poland. She had that for about 10 years, the Made in Chicago Festival. And so she asked me to write something there. That was the first iteration of it. It was not fleshed out. It was just kind of a foundation. And
So
so,
let me jump in here. So it was kind of assisted by the Jazz Institute of Chicago and
oh, Jazz
the
Institute of Chicago made this piece happen, and
cool.
I make that very clear in my liner notes. It's Lauren Deutsch pushed me to write something new, which I did, and the way I ended up doing it is I really wanted to get past the major minor system, as Henry Threadgill calls it. It's just your Western harmony system, and I wanted to try something new, really push my language. So Steve Coleman, I had been spending, he and I had been probably friends for about 15 years at that point or so, and he taught me a lot about thinking. And so I decided that my brother, who's a really accomplished astrologer, charted Vaughn's horoscope and read it. And then what I did is I found the really crucial points, angles, and everything, houses and all that in the chart, and I made a pitch and rhythm system, and I composed from that. And I had these representations of pitches and rhythms that represent aspects of Vaughn that my brother read out of the chart, out of his horoscope, that are very real. Like Vaughn, I knew Vaughn that way, and I was like, oh, this really resonates. This is great.
So is that so when you're saying you're making a connection from astrology aspects to music that's coming out of your guitar, um, what is that process like that how are you making that connection, and is there a way that we as the audience will know that that's happening, or is it just really something that you're expressing? um,
Um, well, I mean, it's what I did is the reason I chose astrology is one main reason and one side reason. The main one is because I was interested in trying at the moment when I first did this was just trying something new sonically that would represent Vaughn. But as I researched him and spent years with George, I found that astrology was very important to the way Vaughn interpreted the world, right?
You
George
knew that?
definitely.
I mean, you found that out later, or you knew that?
No, I knew it at the time in a really like um, sort of just, oh, Von talks about people's birth signs and and all this. But
Okay.
as I delved into interviews with him and had discussions with him before he spoke a lot about metaphysical things and then how he interpreted the world that way. Then Von was also, and then it became more clear as I researched him more. And of course, remember George Freeman's first album is called Birth Sign, right? And so I felt that this was important. The second thing is that Von was very close to family, and so I felt it would be a really interesting way to kind of um, reach out to that aspect of Von with my brother, who's my family, right? And so and then the more my brother got into this chart, the more it was really happen. It's made sense. So we performed the piece in a really rude, like a really scaled down from what it became in 2011, and then it kind of sat while I researched. And then when Lauren approached me in 2017, I started rebuilding it, and that's where I was really learning more about his metaphysical outlook, and not only from interviews with him, but the people who knew him. They all talked about it. All the interviewees talked about his spirituality, astrology. Steve Coleman is very much driven by astrology as far as the significance of his own musical constructions and his theories that he develops. So that's why astrology to me seemed really, really important, particularly for Von. I actually think it's very important for his generation. So then my brother wrote these texts that kind of interpret that use his interpretations, but reference Von's musicianship and mentorship, because basically the chart shows that he's a very emotional person who channeled his energy. I mean, this is astrology reading. I'm not making any sort of, scientific claim here, but that he's very emotional. He had a lot of pain, but he channeled that through music, and there was a sort of force that he was able to connect to and create with. But he also has very much empathy for other human beings. So he wanted to teach. He had a desire, a force to teach, right? And it very much. So my brother took these sort of readings and made these texts that are read in by Bill Brickey in part 5 of the of Vonology, which I call the Mentor's Benediction, which comes from something Kurt Elling once said about Von, that one time Von was playing at University of Chicago and he transformed a bunch of socially inept scholars into warm, loving human beings through what he played. And he called it a
Also a spiritual
benediction.
person.
I mean, I know a lot of those people at University of Chicago, beautiful people, just a little awkward socially. But the thing is I think that the structure itself, to answer your question, it's not really meant to be like, hey, can you hear astrology in what I'm doing? But
Mhm.
the titles of the pieces, where I reference him being Libra, and also I reference the readings, are meant to really more drive an interpretation of him through sound. My whole goal here is it feels like to me there's too much of it, and I think it's artificial divide between serious academic thought and serious artistic production. There's too much of a divide. I mean, I'll tell you right away. When Von got the Rosenberger Award in 2010, the music department called me, or actually the University of Chicago's president's assistant called me and said that the music department had nominated and he was voted unanimously to get this important medal that they give out at the convocation in 2010. It was 2 weeks before convocation and he wasn't answering his phone. So they called me because they saw my name that on the internet and that I played with them. And so the music department, a couple professors came out to listen to us. This was when Melvin Butler was there. So Melvin was there. But this professor used to be there, Bertolt Heckner. He's from Germany. He is not there anymore, but he was one of my important mentors when I eventually ended up there. But he comes up to me and he's got a heavy German accent and he starts talking to me while I'm setting up. I'm like, dude, what is this academic bothering me for? I don't care about academia. These people don't know what they're talking about, right? And you hear that divide with musicians. They think that that's like a sphere they don't even want to be part of. And when I came in, I found there's a lot of, I mean, there's a lot of problems, but there's a lot of humanity and a lot of possibility. But also, there's a lot of problems with the way the Academy understands artistic projects, artistic production, cultural production. Um, and so I feel like voices like myself, people who do it and know intimately what it means to do this, and know people who find deep meaning through this, whether they be musicians, audience members, Wheezy the bartender, the owner of the club, whatever, whoever it is, the executive director of the Jazz Institute, or all the Jazz Institute staff. All of this music means for people in different ways. And so I felt like there should be a way to connect it, and Vonology is an attempt. I actually think of it as volume 2 of my dissertation. It's a sonic representation of what I researched.
I bet you got some killer liner notes.
Neil Tesser did them, yes. Very, very good job. And what was interesting is I had written a whole piece that I eventually posted on my website that I'm working on called Vonology.info. But I gave him a draft of that, and he drew from that to understand my process and then connect it
Wow.
to what he was hearing. So he did a really, really very special liner notes that really capture my intention and what the music does.
Yeah, that's cool. Neil will be doing a panel discussion on Thursday also. The Jazz Institute does this annual thing called what is this thing called jazz?
Right.
And so it's with Neil as well as with Ricky Riccardi, who's the director of collections at the Louis Armstrong House Museum in
Right.
Queens. So that should be a pretty interesting discussion with the two of
Oh,
them.
absolutely, absolutely. I wish I could be there.
So all right, so people who are coming on Thursday, what so I saw a little bit of the Constellation release, I think. Is that pretty much what we're going to see to an extent, or
Oh yeah, I'm just playing the entire work from beginning to end,
mhm.
which features a lot of improvisation and but yeah, it's all 5 movements will be all that we play.
Wow, that's cool. And so it's got how many pieces? There's a lot of players.
There's 13 total. There's 8 instrumentalists, 4 singers, and a conductor. My brother's actually the astrologer is conducting. He conducted in the studio for us when we recorded it. But yeah, it's 13 of us because yeah, that's kind of I wanted to get this. When I first did this piece, um, Lauren was like, "I want to hear you write for a bigger ensemble." I'm like, "Okay, okay, okay." I'll set it up. And I always wanted to work with cello, so I had Tamika, but unfortunately, Tamika's on living in Berlin right now, so I couldn't get her, and because flights are just it's just like crazy
Yeah,
expensive. So I got Allison Chesley working, and she's fantastic. She's just like crazy with the sounds and effects, so she's perfect.
I think it's going to be an amazing experience. So
I think so.
I can't wait to see it. Is there is there anybody at the festival that you were in particular looking forward to seeing?
Number
Like,
one's Henry Threadgill.
what's
Uh,
that?
Henry Threadgill's number one. I mean,
Yeah,
he's one of my, I mean, hero to the point of emotion. It's like he has shaped me a lot these past few years, and I just have always been intrigued by his music. Even when I saw him, I remember seeing him in '96 at the festival when it was at Grant Park, and I'm like, what is going on here? This is unbelievable. Why would somebody make music like this? This is like, oh, I want to know more about this cat. And he's number one. Of course, number 2 would be Bill Frisell. You get to
both
meet
headliners on Thursday
backstage.
and Friday.
But
Yep.
I'm really thrilled for Ethan Fillion and his meditations on
Oh
Mingus.
yeah,
Oh, that is just some. Ethan is just such a talent. I mean, I don't think. I hope Chicago realizes what sort of talent they have there, because he can not only arrange and write and do this music and play. He can play tunes. He can play, you know, different styles. I mean, he's just a very special player. And
yeah.
then
He's got opening slot, I think, on Saturday,
Friday,
if I'm Pritzker, and then
yeah,
he's also
Friday.
sideman for I think a couple other performances too.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of the local acts. I mean, there's so many. Russ Johnson. I'm glad Mark Feldman's going to be there. I've been wanting to meet him and hear him. I haven't had a chance to work with him yet since he moved to town. And I'm excited to hear Emmanuel Wilkins play live.
Yeah,
That kid is just some other shit. It's just amazing. It's like you work so hard on this music, and then this like 30 something comes along. You're like, that's what I want to do. I can't do it that well. How did you do that?
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I tell you, I had the pleasure to talk to you, and
You too,
and
Scott.
we'll
Thanks, man.
we're gonna see you on Thursday night. What so you start at 6:30, right?
Yeah, we do 6:30 to 7:30, and then Henry comes on at 7:45.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Mike. I appreciate your
Thank you,
time.
Scott. Thank
Okay,
you.
talk to you
Take
soon.
care. Bye bye.